Alright everyone, let's take a look out here at the Napaskiak Airport. It's pretty typical for this region in how it serves the local community. It's identified by its IATA code,
Pause, system
PKA,
test, okay.
that's Papa Kilo Alpha, and its ICAO code, PAPK, Papa Alpha Papa Kilo. Travelers often know it by that PKA designation. It's a state-owned, public-use airport just about 1 nautical mile southwest of Napaskiak's main village. It's actually categorized as a general aviation facility by the FAA. Looking at the records, it handled about 1,321 passenger boardings in 2008. That number was a bit down from the year before, which saw around 1,858, but it gives you a sense of its scale. Now, what's really interesting here, especially for those of us who appreciate diverse operations, is that beyond the gravel strip, which, we won't get into the specifics of, it also has a seaplane waterway. That's right on the Kuskokwim River. It's a pretty generous stretch of water, too, measuring about 15,000 feet by 2,000 feet. So it really supports a broad range of aviation for the area, from wheeled aircraft to those equipped for water landings. It's also an unattended airport, which means pilots operating here really need to be on their game. Up ahead on your left, you're going to start seeing the sprawling community of Bethel, or Mamterelek, as the Yupik people have called it for thousands of years. You'll spot it easily, sitting right there on the Kuskokwim River. The region around here is flat and generally treeless, which makes it stand out against other parts of Alaska. It's the largest community in western Alaska and truly serves as a major hub for the entire region. Bethel's airport is the 3rd busiest in the entire state for total flights, with multiple asphalt and gravel runways. A huge step up from some of the smaller, unattended strips we've seen. Mamterellermiut, meaning smokehouse people, was the original name for the residents here, a nod to their fish smokehouse tradition. In 1885, the Moravian Church established a mission, and missionaries like John Kilbuck made Yupik the language of the church, helping to translate the Christian Bible into the native tongue. For a truly wild story, back in 2012, some pranksters put out flyers falsely announcing that a Taco Bell was opening here. In response, Taco Bell actually airlifted a food truck, loaded with enough ingredients for 10,000 tacos, right into town. On a more regular basis, Bethel has more taxi drivers per capita than any other city in the US. Many of those drivers are Albanian or South Korean immigrants. Annual events are a big deal here, too. They host the Kuskokwim 300 dog sled race every January, which offers the largest purse for any 300-mile sled dog race. In the spring, the Kama'ai Yupik Dance Festival brings together hundreds of costumed dancers, drummers, and singers from all over Alaska, performing traditional Yupik story dances. Kama'ai means a warm hello. There's even a cultural center where you can find artisans selling traditional crafts like kaspek and ulu knives. That building incorporates Yupik themes in its architecture, using a double circle motif called Elingwet that represents the cosmos and Earth. Alright passengers, if you look out to your 10 o'clock, about 20 nautical miles away, you'll see Nunapitchuk or Nunapicure in central Yupik. This community, like so many here, is on the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, right on swampy tundra. There are actually no roads in the village. Buildings are connected by boardwalks. Now, something truly fascinating and quite serious about Nunapitchuk. It's facing an existential threat from thawing permafrost. Homes here have been sinking into what locals call Alaskan quicksand, an unstable, muck-like substance that forms when the permafrost melts and mixes with soil. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. It's causing critical infrastructure, like their community washateria, to break down. Because of this, the Yupik people of Nunapitchuk collectively voted in 2023 to actually relocate the entire village to higher ground, about 3 miles away. It's a huge undertaking projected to cost around $277 million. The resilience of these communities in the face of such rapid environmental change is just incredible. And for those interested, alcohol is completely banned in the village. Alright everyone, if you look out to your 1 o'clock, about 30 nautical miles away, you'll start to see a small cluster of buildings on the right bank of the Yukon River. That's Russian Mission, or in central Yupik, Ekugmiat, meaning people of the point. You can really spot it by its location right on the expansive Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. You'll see the river winding through what looks like a mix of tundra and some boreal forests. Keep an eye out for what might look like little onion domes. The Russian Orthodox Church is a really prominent feature there. And like many of these remote villages, its gravel airstrip is a lifeline, standing out against the natural landscape. Speaking of resilience and adaptability, Russian Mission truly embodies that spirit. This place actually got its start as the very first Russian-American company fur trading post on the Yukon River, way back in 1837. It was an important site for trade, which, of course, brought its own complexities to the indigenous Cupik people already living there. Then, in 1851, something really significant happened. The first Russian Orthodox mission in interior Alaska was established right here by an Aleut priest, Jacob Netsvetov. That mission was called Pokrovskaya Mission, and it gradually led to the village being officially renamed Russian Mission around 1900. Fun fact, for a while, it was actually often confused with another village on the Kuskokwim that was also called Russian Mission, which eventually got renamed Chwathbaluk in the 1960s to avoid the mix-up. Today, the enduring legacy of that mission is still very visible, especially with the Russian Orthodox Church's architecture. Most residents here are Russian Orthodox, which is pretty unique for this part of Alaska. Their way of life, well, it's heavily centered on subsistence living, hunting, fishing, and trapping. They really rely on the land and the river. You might even hear, according to local accounts, the sound of people hitting the bottoms of their aluminum boats with wooden clubs to scare salmon into their drifting gill nets during fishing season. It's a very traditional way to ensure a catch. The Yukon River itself is ice-free from about mid-June through October, allowing for barge and boat travel. But for much of the long, cold winter, which can see an average of 71 inches of snowfall, air travel and snow machines are the main ways to get around between villages. You won't find any alcohol sold here. By the way, it's a prohibited community. It's a place that, despite outside influences, has really maintained a deep connection to its traditional roots and, these incredible cultural layers that history has left behind. Looking out at this vast, frozen delta, you can see why aviation is the very pulse of life here. Over 80% of Alaska's communities aren't connected by roads, and for dozens of remote Alaska Native villages, air travel is their absolute lifeline, bringing in everything from supplies and mail to medical care. This is the realm of the legendary bush pilot. Since the gold rush, they've navigated this incredible, unpredictable terrain, learning to land on anything from a frozen lake to a gravel bar. It's a dangerous job, requiring incredible skill and resourcefulness. The aviation landscape here was also shaped by the military. During World War II and the Cold War, Alaska became a strategic front line, leading the government to build the airfields and communication systems that are still critical today. Even with modern technology, flying here remains a constant battle against extreme weather and isolation, an ongoing testament to human ingenuity. Speaking of these dramatic landscapes, at your 11 o'clock, about 15 miles away, you'll start to see some of the features of the St. Michael volcanic field. Unlike the rolling tundra we just flew over, this area is characterized by 55 cones and craters, including low, broad shield volcanoes and Mars, scattered across St. Michael and Stewart Islands. It's actually part of the larger Bering Sea volcanic province. Now, there aren't any written records of recent eruptions, but Eskimo elders in the region have accounts of the mountain smoking. Considering the oldest Eskimo settlements date back around 200 to 500 BC, it's pretty likely some of these mountains erupted sometime within the last 3,000 years. At your 12 o'clock, about 10 miles away, we're looking at St. Michael, or as the Yupik call it, Tasik, and the Inupiaq, Tasik. You can spot it easily on the east side of St. Michael Island, right on the southeastern edge of Norton Sound. A small settlement surrounded by the vast waters, disconnected from the mainland. Speaking of deep history and human resilience in Alaska, St. Michael itself was a significant trading point for the Yupik and Inupiaq peoples long before the Russians ever arrived in 1833 to establish their northernmost trading post here. It's a place where tradition, like hunting seal and beluga whale, still defines life, even as it grapples with modern challenges like permafrost melt. It's pretty wild to think about. Alright, so the settlement we just discussed, St. Michael, sits on the east side of St. Michael Island itself. At your 11 o'clock, roughly 9 miles away, you'll see this island, about 9 nautical miles long and over 6 nautical miles wide. It also holds Stebbins on its northwest side. This island really boomed during the 1897 gold rush, serving as a major gateway to the Alaskan interior via the Yukon River Delta, about 40 miles southwest. As many as 10,000 people were said to live here then. It became a key trading post for Alaska natives, with communities centralizing after the measles epidemic of 1900 and the influenza epidemic of 1918. At your 11 o'clock, about 6 nautical miles away, you'll spot St. Michael Airport. That's SMK for Sierra, Mike, Kilo, or PAMK for Papa, Alpha, Mike, Kilo. You can't miss it. Just look for the prominent gravel airstrip, a vital link in this wild region, west of the actual town. Given the isolation that made those epidemics so devastating for the local communities in the past, places like this airport are absolutely essential, aren't they? It's a state-owned public-use facility, a crucial lifeline that connects St. Michael to other bush communities across Alaska. Without air travel, these communities would be even more isolated, relying on treacherous winter ice roads or limited summer boat traffic. It really highlights the sheer resilience of life out here. Well, folks, take a look around out there. We're flying over a part of Alaska where, for generations, travel was an immense struggle. Before aircraft, imagine dog sleds, going perhaps 15 to 20 miles a day over frozen tundra and unpredictable ice. When aviation started to take hold here in the early 20th century, it wasn't just about faster travel, it was about survival, about connecting communities that were utterly isolated. The first commercial flights in Alaska were anything but glamorous. Pilots were flying war surplus biplanes, essentially egg crates with wings, carrying everything from mining equipment to doctors. With no reliable maps, weather reports, or modern navigation systems, every single flight was a gamble with death, relying on pure skill and guts. One of the true pioneers was Carl Ben Eielson. He came to Fairbanks to teach high school in 1922, but his flying skills quickly got noticed. By 1924, he was flying Alaska's first airmail routes. His flight from Fairbanks to McGrath, which took dog sleds up to 18 days, he did in just a few hours. Think about that. Cutting weeks of travel down to mere hours transformed how people lived and worked up here. These early bush pilots weren't just about speed. They were literally mapping the terrain as they flew. The Veen brothers, for example, after a crash, would walk out and note the landscape they crossed because accurate maps were so rare. Some areas were still using 19th century Russian colonial charts even into the 21st century. Imagine flying into the unknown, trusting your instincts over outdated charts. And the challenges weren't just the cold. Getting fuel was a constant struggle, hand-cranked from 55-gallon drums into the aircraft. If water or dirt got in, you'd be in serious trouble. There's even a story about a pilot who crashed because a ball of mosquitoes clogged his fuel line. Can you believe that? Mosquitoes. Aviation here really transformed things, but it came at a cost. Many early aviators, like Eielson himself, didn't live long enough to see the full impact of their work. Eielson tragically died in a crash in 1929 while trying to rescue passengers from an icebound ship in the Bering Sea, not too far from our general location. It's a stark reminder of the sacrifices made to open up this vast, beautiful, yet unforgiving land. Alright, everyone, if you look out at your 1 o'clock, about 20 miles away, you'll see Cape Denby. It's pretty distinct from up here, a moderately high, rounded hill really connected to the mainland by this low, narrow neck of land. You can clearly see that headland jutting out into Norton Sound. Now, Cape Denby is actually quite famous among archaeologists, especially for something called the Aislop site. It's a significant archaeological spot, an archaic stage hunter-gatherer site. I mean, it tells us so much about the early peoples who lived here, how they survived in this environment long, long ago. It's pretty fascinating to think about the kind of lives they led, isn't it? Geologically speaking, the bight, that's the inward curve of the coastline eastward of the Cape, is pretty shallow. The water gradually becomes shallower as you approach it. Interesting fact for any mariners out there, you can actually find a good spot to anchor on the east side of the Cape if you're dealing with northeasterly winds. But you gotta be careful, the water quickly gets quite shallow inside a depth of 4 fathoms when you're getting close to shore. Alright, so at your 12 o'clock, about 20 miles away, you can see the wide expanse of Norton Bay, or Kanjiakasuk, as the Inupiaq people know it. You can really pick it out from up here by the way the land cradles it. See that mountain on the north shore, somewhat to your left? That's Kwiktalek Mountain, standing at about 1,200 feet. And then, further south, you've got the Reindeer Hills. It really helps define the bay's entrance, along with Cape Nome. This bay, it's a fascinating place with a long history. Captain James Cook actually named Norton Bay and Norton Sound as one entity back in 1778, after Sir Fletcher Norton, who was the Speaker of the House of Commons back then. Later on, in the 1830s, Captain Mikhail Dmitrievich Tebenkov, a director of the Russian-American Company, explored the area and discovered a bay within the sound that still bears his name. It's pretty wild to think about these early explorers naming everything after people across the ocean. Into the bay flow a few important rivers, the Kwik, Quinnipiac, and Tubuchulik rivers. Geologically, this whole Nulata Norton Bay region goes way back to the Cretaceous period, with old deposits of conglomerate, sandstone, and shale still found in the middle of the basin. We're not really in the big gold country here like Nome, but there are some small pockets of placer gold deposits in these streams. Now, the bay itself has always been a lifeline for the people here. They've sustained themselves on the marine life, things like tomcod and herring. The local people even used to weave the hair of seals caught from the bay into fur cloth, and the thick skin of the ogric, a type of seal, was made into footwear called mukluks. And during the spring, you'd find walruses, a vital food source. See that northwest shore of Cape Denby? That's where the National Historic Landmark Aislop site is. This site is incredible because it shows us layers of human history. The Norton culture, dating from 500 BC to 300 AD, existed right above evidence of the Denby Flint complex, which goes back even further, 6,000 to 4,000 BC. It's a real window into ancient human connections. There was even a fort and a trading town established in 1840 at the mouth of the Ukaliak River, part of Norton Bay. In 1917, the Norton Bay Nature Reserve was established, covering about 350,000 acres. It was set aside for the indigenous Alaskan natives and extends a good 110 miles to the southeast of Nome. It's also where many Eskimo natives were buried after epidemic diseases swept through the region. It's a sobering reminder of the resilience of people here against such overwhelming odds. Okay, everyone, take a look out your window at your 12 o'clock, about 15 miles away. We're looking at the small city of Alim, or as it's known in central Yupik, Niviaq Korlik, and in Inupiaq, Niviaq Shoglik. You can spot it nestled right on the northwest shore of Norton Bay, pretty typical of many of these coastal villages that hug the water. Now, speaking of resilience, which we touched on with the Ayatayat site, Elim has a remarkable history of standing firm. This community, once known as Nuviakak, maintained a vibrant subsistence culture long before any outside influence. And get this, when the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act came about in 1971, Elim actually chose not to participate, opting instead to retain title to almost 300,000 acres of their traditional lands. That was a hugely significant decision, really showing their commitment to their way of life and sovereignty. This area, with its subarctic climate, marks the westernmost natural range for black spruce trees, which are pretty hardy. You'll see them growing in some tough, cold, poorly drained soils. But what's truly defining here is the local reliance on the land and sea. We're talking a subsistence economy with a cash overlay, you know? Fishing, caribou hunting, berry picking. These are all central to daily life. Many here still speak a Norton Sound Yupik dialect, connecting them to generations past. And here's a crucial part of Elim's current story, something really highlighting that deep resilience. Just north of the village, about 30 miles, lies the Boulder Creek area, at the headwaters of the Tabuchalik River. There's been a long-standing and intense controversy surrounding a proposed uranium mine here. Residents, along with the Norton Bay Watershed Council, have been fighting exploration efforts by a Canadian mining company, Panther Minerals. They're worried sick about the potential for water and air pollution, radioactive byproducts getting into the river, which would devastate the salmon runs and other wildlife they depend on for food and culture. They've actively protested, even at the Iditarod race, which actually passes right through Elim, you know? It's an ongoing fight to protect their ancestral lands and their very way of life from these potential harms. At your 11 o'clock, about 9 miles away, we've got Elim Airport, or as it's known by its FAA identifier, Papa Foxtrot Echo Lima. You can spot it pretty easily. It's just southwest of the main part of Elim itself, a state-owned, public-use facility. Speaking of Elim and its vital role in the region, this airport, it's a crucial link for the community, especially with the ongoing efforts to protect their ancestral lands. It's classified by the FAA as commercial service, non-primary for the years 2009 to 2013, which means it saw between 2,500 and 10,000 passenger boardings a year back then. Actually, in 2008, it was categorized as general aviation with about 2,300 enplanements. It's interesting how those classifications can shift, isn't it? While there aren't specific major destinations listed, this airport is undoubtedly a lifeline for folks here, connecting them to other regional hubs for supplies and, well, everything else they need. It's a testament to the enduring importance of aviation in these remote parts of Alaska. I don't have any specific details on local flying club activities here, but you can imagine general aviation plays a big part in connecting these remote communities. Alright everyone, if you look out at your 12 o'clock about 8 nautical miles away, you'll see what's known as Moses Point Airport. That's M-O-S, Mike Oscar Sierra, for its FAA identifier. Now, speaking of airports near Aleem, you might remember we just talked about Aleem Airport, the state-owned facility. This one, Moses Point, is actually privately owned by the Aleem Native Corporation, which is a pretty interesting contrast in land management and ownership in these parts. You can spot it by its single gravel runway, which is about 3,000 feet long and 60 feet wide. This place has some history to it. It actually operated as Moses Point Army Airfield during World War II. Imagine the activity here back then, a critical link for military operations in this remote region. It really gives you a sense of how vital aviation infrastructure has been, and still is, for Alaska, particularly during periods of conflict. But it's had a rough go recently. That runway, while once busy back in 1988, it saw around 292 aircraft operations a month, mostly air taxi and general aviation, isn't maintained in the winter and has been badly eroded in spots. In fact, after the remnants of Typhoon Merbok swept through in 2022, the runway was severely damaged and can't be landed on anymore. It's a stark reminder of nature's power and the challenges of maintaining infrastructure in such a dynamic environment. These days, if you were even thinking of using it, you'd need prior permission from the Aleem Native Corporation's president or board, which I imagine is pretty hard to get given its current state. Alright folks, if you look out, you're getting a real sense of the deep time here, the sheer ancient power that shaped this incredible land we're flying over. We're in a region, the Seward Peninsula and the area around Kotzebue Sound. That's a geological marvel, a story written in rock going back hundreds of millions of years. This entire region isn't one solid piece of land. It's actually made of separate pieces of crust, called terrains, that collided and fused together ages ago. Imagine massive landmasses mashing together under immense pressure. That collision is what left us with a landscape so rich in mineral wealth. Speaking of wealth, this region is famous for its mineral resources. The gold rushes of over a century ago pulled millions of ounces from the ground. But it's not just gold. Not far from here is the Red Dog Mine, the largest zinc mine in the US and a top producer of lead and silver. This land also holds resources essential for our modern world, from platinum to the rare earth elements used in our technology. More recently, colossal forces of ice and fire have left their mark. Huge ice sheets carved out the valleys and smoothed the mountains you see below. But it wasn't just ice. Powerful underground steam explosions created the Devil Mountain Lakes, the largest of their kind in the world. And look for the dark patches on the landscape. That could be the Lost Gym lava flow, a relatively young feature that formed only a couple of thousand years ago. Underpinning everything is permafrost, the continuously frozen ground that acts as the foundation for this landscape. It can be hundreds of feet deep and creates unique landforms you might spot, like the geometric patterns on the tundra called ice wedge polygons. This frozen ground is a delicate system, influencing everything from plant life to water flow, and it's incredibly sensitive to changes in our climate. At your 9 o'clock, about 20 miles away, we're approaching Golovin, or as the Inupiaq and Central Yupik people call it, Sinjik or Singik. While we were just talking about how challenging it can be to maintain infrastructure in remote Alaska, with Moses Point Airport effectively out of commission, Golovin here really shows a different side of resilience. This village, nestled between Golovnin Bay and Golovnin Lagoon, might be small, but it's got a deep history and a very vibrant, enduring culture. Interestingly, the name Golovin itself is actually a bit of a misspelling. It was named for Russian Vice Admiral Vasily Golovnin, who explored this area in the early 1800s, but the town's name was slightly changed because it was apparently easier for folks to pronounce. The bay and the lagoon, though, they kept the original spelling. Golovin was originally the Inupiat village of Chinjik, settled by the Kawaramiut Eskimos, who later mixed with the Unaligmiut Eskimos. It's significant because this place was actually the initial point of contact between Russian sailors and the native people on the Seward Peninsula. That early interaction, it wasn't always peaceful. There are stories, for instance, of early explorers hiring Eskimo men from Chinjik to take them to silver mines. Not gold, but silver initially, and paying them with just a few fish for their dangerous efforts. There's even a somber account of an Eskimo woman being taken by a Russian sailor, and her protesting husband being killed. That clash of cultures, it's really shaped the history here, and you can still see its echoes today. Later on, around 1890, John Dexter set up a trading post that became a critical hub for prospectors heading out across the Seward Peninsula. When gold was found in Council in 98, Golovin became a key supply point. Imagine ships unloading here, and then supplies being moved across Golovnin Lagoon and up the Fish and Nyakluk rivers to the gold fields. Of course, when Nome blew up with gold, a lot of that activity shifted. But Golovin adapted. Reindeer herding became a big part of the local economy in the early 1900s, and today, it's still very much an Inupiat Eskimo village rooted in a subsistence lifestyle, focused on fishing and herding. You'll find it's a pretty tidy community, and local reports mention people out fishing for crab, for example. It's a dry village too. The sale and importation of alcohol is banned, and for a modern touch, Golovin is a major checkpoint on the famous Iditarod Trail sled dog race. Mushers even take a mandatory 8-hour layover here on their way to Nome, often crashing in the city hall/library/armory building. That's quite a modern role for a place with such ancient roots, isn't it? Well, speaking of the enduring features of this land, let's shift our gaze a bit. At your 10 o'clock, about 3 miles away, you'll see the Kasadepiga River, or as the Inupiaq call it, Kaksruktak. This river, a significant southern branch, flows into the Nyakluk River, which we've seen before, starting its journey generally to the northeast and covering about 30 miles. Its name has quite a history, actually. On early maps, you'd see it as Koshotak or Kaksiktapiga, but eventually, the U.S. Geographic Board softened it to Kasadepiga. The local origin is clear, but the exact meaning's a bit of a mystery, though it's been suggested that the last part means mouth of the river and the first part loon. So a free translation could be the river with a loon at its mouth. Sounds quite poetic, doesn't it? This river isn't terribly steep. Its gradient doesn't go beyond 13 to 14 feet per mile, and from its mouth to near the head of its longest tributary, the whole fall isn't more than 400 feet. It's got a big drainage area, and small boats and canoes can actually navigate it for about 15 miles. The upland in which the Kasadepiga Valley is incised ranges in elevation from 800 to 1,800 feet. The valley it cuts through is pretty impressive too. A broad, deeply gravel-filled valley, with the stream bed trenched down 30 to 150 feet, leaving these clear gravel terraces and benches along nearly its whole length. The bedrock underneath all that gravel is mostly limestones and schists of the Nome group, and importantly, many of those quartz veins and stringers running through it are known to be gold-bearing. Speaking of gold, this area was first prospected back in 1898 by a group known as the Big Four, Daniel B., Libby, A.P. Mordaunt, L.S. Melsing, and Harry L. Blake. That's actually where the largest tributary, Big Fork Creek, gets its name. While some claims were located in '98, most of the serious staking on the river and its tributaries happened in 1899. Places like Quartz, Boulder, Dixon, and Spruce Creeks reported thousands of dollars in yields that year, mostly just from prospecting, mind you, not systematic mining. The year 1900 was a bit rough. Delays getting in, then low water, and finally, floods washed away a lot of the dams and sluice boxes just after sluicing began. So, that year was more about continued prospecting than big hauls. But a really significant development for this district was the extension of the Council City and Solomon River Railroad right up to Penelope Creek, making it much easier to connect with ocean transportation routes. Now, one fascinating bit about the gold here, especially in places like Dry Gulch, a small channel in the main valley's terrace, the gold wasn't found on the bedrock, but actually in the gravels of the terrace itself, often concentrated on clay seams. It's a testament to the diverse ways this land held its riches, and sometimes you had to look in unexpected places. As we fly over this expansive tundra, take a moment to appreciate the sheer resilience of life that calls this region home. You're looking at an intricate web of adaptations and survival, a place defined by its wildlife and the deep connection the indigenous peoples have always had with it. You might spot some muskox below, those shaggy, prehistoric-looking creatures. They were actually gone from Alaska by the late 1800s due to commercial hunting. A dedicated effort brought them back, and today, thousands roam these hills. In the summer, locals even collect the incredibly soft underwool they shed, a prime example of a sustainable interaction with the land. This is also the path of the Western Arctic caribou herd, which undertakes one of the longest land migrations on the planet. For millennia, this cycle has been central to the subsistence and culture of indigenous communities. After disappearing in the mid-1800s, caribou are now making a comeback, with calves being born on the peninsula once again. It's a delicate balance, as any new roads can disrupt these ancient corridors. The Bering Strait below us is a 55-mile-wide gateway connecting the Pacific and Arctic Oceans, and it is teeming with life. This narrow channel is a crucial migration corridor for hundreds of thousands of marine mammals, including beluga and bowhead whales, several species of seals, and Pacific walruses. As the Arctic warms and sea ice melts, increasing ship traffic through this bottleneck poses a real threat to this ecosystem and the coastal communities who rely on it. This region is also a vital part of the Pacific Americas Flyway, a massive migratory path for millions of birds traveling between the high Arctic and South America. From the Arctic fox with its fur-covered paws to the massive whale migrations, every animal here is uniquely adapted. But this landscape is changing rapidly. Rising winter temperatures are altering habitats, threatening everything from caribou and salmon to the plankton that supports the entire marine food web. It is a challenging time for this incredible wild place and for the people whose lives are so deeply interwoven with its rhythms. At your 12 o'clock, about 6 miles away, we're looking at the Kruzgamipa River, also known as the Pilgrim River. It's a 55-mile tributary that plays a pretty significant role in this region's water system. It all starts way up there at Salmon Lake, sitting at an elevation of about 447 feet. Then it winds its way down to just 20 feet above sea level at its mouth. It's interesting, actually, because in its upper reaches, the Kruzgamipa and the Grand Central rivers essentially form one stream, though they're known by different names. The Grand Central actually flows into Salmon Lake, while the Kruzgamipa then flows right out of it, eventually making its way into the Cusitrin River. From there, the water joins the Amuric Basin, then Port Clarence, and finally the Bering Sea. The river itself flows through a broad, gravel-filled valley. Much of that gravel, by the way, was actually deposited by glaciers that carved their way down from the Kiglewake Mountains. Speaking of those unexpected places we talked about finding riches, well, the history here, particularly in the drainage basin of the Upper Kruzgamipa, is really tied to prospecting. It was initially organized as the Golden Gate Mining District, and now it's part of the Kugarok District. Prospecting results weren't always encouraging, but some gold was certainly found. Iron Creek, which is the largest eastern tributary to the Kruzgamipa, was pretty important for mining. And Willow Creek, about 3 miles long, joins the Kruzgamipa a bit upstream from there. Near its mouth, Willow Creek actually cuts through a small rock canyon, about 50 feet deep. Both Willow and Slate Creek, a couple miles further up, have seen some work every season since 1901, producing some gold from the limestones and quartz schists you find there. There was even a company back in 1904 that prospected a high gravel bench between Slate and Willow Creeks, hoping to bring water down from Salmon Lake for hydraulic mining. And sometimes you had to look in unexpected places. Alright everyone, at your 10 o'clock, about 3 miles away, you'll start to see the winding course of the Cusitrin River, or Kurikian in Inupiaq. It's a significant 95-mile-long stream here on the Seward Peninsula, and we just discussed its tributary, the Kruzgamipa River, a little while ago. You can trace its path from its source at Cusitrin Lake, which is in the central part of the peninsula, as it flows west. Eventually, it empties into the Amuric Basin, which then drains into the Bering Sea through Port Clarence. Now, besides the Kruzgamipa, the Cusitrin's also fed by other rivers like the Noxapaga, Kugarok, and Kugrik, so it really acts as a major artery for this part of the landscape. The name Cusitrin, coming from Inupiaq, was actually recorded back in 1900 by the United States Geological Survey, and then officially adopted in 1950 by the U.S. Board on Geographic Names. What's fascinating is that on its lower stretches, there's a former village site called Mary's Igloo. It's abandoned now, but it's not forgotten. People from the nearby village of Teller still use it for subsistence activities. It's a testament to the enduring connection these communities have to the land, even as settlement patterns shift. Speaking of these crucial waterways that feed into the larger Amuric Basin, which, as we discussed, eventually drains into the Bering Sea through Port Clarence, take a look now at your 10 o'clock about 6 miles away. That's the Aislop River. You can spot it by its broad floodplain and the many meanders it makes as it flows into Grantley Harbor from the north. The river actually forks about 20 miles north of the Amuric Basin itself, with the eastern, larger branch known by prospectors as the American River. This waterway drains an impressive area of anywhere from 800 to 1,000 square miles right in the heart of the Seward Peninsula. The western branch of the Aislop occupies a pretty wide depression. It's about 20 miles long and around 5 miles wide, with an altitude of about 500 feet near its western end. This depression runs parallel to Grantley Harbor and Port Clarence, separated by an upland that rises to about 1,000 feet. Below the forks, the Aislop Valley is just packed with floodplain gravels. It's thought that these gravels actually fill what was once either a massive lake or even an arm of the sea, which over time just filled up with sediment. Up north of the Aislop, the bedrock is mostly Silurian limestones of the Port Clarence Formation. What's interesting is that these limestones are comparatively unaltered and generally aren't mineralized much at all, which is a bit surprising given the region's history with prospecting, isn't it? Speaking of Brooks Mountain, which we just saw, it's actually the highest peak in what you're seeing now, the rugged York Mountains, straight ahead at your 12 o'clock, about 5 miles away. They stretch inland from the Bering Sea all the way to a cape that shares their name. You can really see how the streams have carved out these deep, canyon-like valleys on their seaward sides. It's quite dramatic, isn't it? These mountains aren't part of a long, continuous chain like the Kiglewake or Bendelabin ranges further south. Instead, they form these distinct, isolated highlands in the northern part of the Seward Peninsula. Their western flanks just drop off to the York Plateau, which is pretty striking. At your 11 o'clock, about 5 miles away, you'll see Meersprinsa Uelskova, or Cape Prince of Wales. It's the westernmost mainland point of North America and the US, dividing the Chukchi and Bering Seas. Near Wales, this cape was discovered and named Cape Gvozdes by Russian navigators Fyodorov and Gvozdes in 1732. Captain James Cook later renamed it in 1778 for the British Prince of Wales, becoming official in 1944. It's only about 51 nautical miles from here to Cape Dezhnev, Eurasia's easternmost point. Alright everyone, welcome back. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've just touched down safely, and I hope you enjoyed that unique perspective on this incredible corner of the world as much as I did. We started our flight tracing the stunning coastline of Norton Bay, or Kenjiakasuk, as the Inupiaq know it, a place Captain Cook himself charted. It's truly fascinating to see how the Quick, Quiniak, and Tabuchalik rivers carve into that ancient landscape, and knowing the Ayatayat site on Cape Denby holds evidence of cultures stretching back millennia. Well, it really puts things into perspective. Moving northwest, we saw Aleem, Neviar Korlik, a testament to resilience, holding onto their ancestral lands and subsistence culture, even as they face challenges like that proposed uranium mine. Then on to Golovin, Sinjik, where Inupiat ingenuity and trading history met the gold rush prospectors, shaping a community that's still a vital Iditarod checkpoint today. It's always striking to see White Mountain, Nazarvik, an inland village deeply connected to the Fish River and its traditions, especially its role as a key rest stop for those amazing Iditarod teams. We then followed the Nyakluk River to Council City during the Gold Rush, now a quiet, important cultural site with history still visible on the ground, overshadowed by the majestic Mount Bendelabin. The Kruzgamipa and Cusitran rivers showed us how water carves both landscape and history, from prospecting sites to the enduring use of places like Mary's Igloo. And what about Teller, that community on Nuke Spit? A place of early reindeer herding, gold finds, and a significant detour for the dirigible Norge. It really highlights how intertwined human history is with this environment, even as rising waters present new challenges. Breivik mission's story always gets me. Established as a mission, a place of trade, and then hit so devastatingly hard by the 1918 flu. It's a stark reminder of life's fragility. As we headed out, Brooks Mountain revealed its secrets, a watershed divide with high-grade uranium deposits, contrasting with the Lost River area, ironically named by gold prospectors who missed the real treasure, tin. And then there was Cape Mountain, Kienjin, marking the northern end of the Continental Divide, another hub for tin mining and now a crucial radar station. Finally, we soared over Wales, or Kienjin, the westernmost city on mainland North America, a place of immense history, from ancient burner culture to whaling, and a community still thriving on subsistence despite incredible hardships, even recent polar bear encounters. Right next to it, Cape Prince of Wales, a true geographic marker, dividing the Chukchi and Bering Seas, a spot charted by both Russian explorers and Captain Cook. It's been a journey through time, culture, and incredible landscapes. This region truly embodies human resilience and the deep connection between people and their land, against a backdrop of breathtaking natural beauty and challenging history. Thanks for flying with me today. I hope you've gained a new appreciation for this extraordinary part of the world. Do join me again sometime, won't you?